All right, you guys, today's story is Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball. The author is Judi Barrett, and the illustrator is Ron Barrett. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we could each eat, and Grandpa was doing the flipping. What do you notice about the picture? You'll see some changes as we read. Suddenly, seconds later, something flew through the air and headed towards the kitchen ceiling. What is it? It's a pancake, and it landed right on Henry. After we realized the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. That means nothing else exciting happens. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry. That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale bedtime story he'd ever told. Do you know what a tall tale is? It's a story that's made up. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chew and Swallow. What's happening to the picture, you guys? Something's happening. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street with stores, houses with trees, and gardens all around them, a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all the food they could ever want. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was the weather. It came 3 times a day. At breakfast, at lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. That doggy, he's waiting for his next meal. Look at him. Whatever the weather served was what they ate. But it never rained rain, it never snowed snow, and it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice. It snowed mashed potatoes and green peas, and sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning and even have a prediction for the next day's food. Look, it says cloudy. What's the weather for tomorrow? Soup? Meatballs? When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way they were always prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and there usually were, people took them home and put them in their refrigerators in case they got hungry between meals. The menu varied. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny-side-up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down for the toast, and most of the time it rained milk after. For lunch one day, frankfurters, what's a frankfurter? It's a hot dog, good, already in their rolls, blew in from the northwest at about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby. Then the wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal. Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by a gradual clearing with a wonderful Jell-O setting in the west. Yummy, look at that big old Jell-O. The sanitation department, that's the trash people, of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all of the cats and dogs. Then they emptied some of it into the ocean for the fish and turtles and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for people's flower gardens. They didn't have to grow food gardens. Life for the townspeople was delicious until the weather took a turn for the worse. Spaghetti ties up town. Oh no. One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day long. Look at their noses. Gorgonzola cheese is stinky. The next day there was only broccoli, all overcooked. And the next day there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. She does not look happy. Another day there was pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal. They got stuck in the fog. The food was getting larger, and so were the portions. People were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently. That means often, or a lot. Awful things were happening. One Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread and rolls all day long and into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, some with seeds, some without. There was white bread and rye bread and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread and rolls before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds pecked at it a little bit, but it just stayed there and got staler and staler. Stale bread is when it's not soft and squishy, it's crunchy and doesn't taste good. There was a storm of pancakes one morning and a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of its weight, so they had to close the school. Oh no. Lunch one day brought 15-inch drifts of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a stomachache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind accompanied by an even worse tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There was seeds and pulp everywhere. Oh my word, you guys, look at all of the characters in this tornado. Do you see them? You'll have to pause the screen and take a look at all of that. The sanitation department gave up. The job was too big. Like those donuts. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up, and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. You guys, they have to leave the town. Look at this poor man with the noodle on his head. Oh no. The people glued together the giant pieces of stale bread, like sandwiches with peanut butter. They took the absolute necessities with them, and they set sail on their rafts for a new land. Oh my goodness, look at the submarine sandwiches coming in. After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town, which welcomed them. The bread had held up really well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. Would you like to live in a house of bread? The children began school again, and the adults all tried to find places for themselves in the new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at a supermarket. They found it odd that food was kept on shelves, packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. Meat had to be cooked, was kept in large refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky except rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs. No one ever got hit by a hamburger again. And nobody dared to go back to the town of Chew and Swallow to find out what happened. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's story. I remember his goodnight kiss. Now notice what's happening to the pictures in the back of the story. What is missing now? The next morning we woke up to see snow falling outside of our window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate it a little faster than usual so we could go sledding with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat of butter on top, and we could almost smell mashed potatoes. Do you see how the snow hill looks like a mound of mashed potatoes? The end. All right, you guys, it's time for you to draw a picture of what kind of food you want falling from the sky. Post your pictures on Seesaw. I will create an activity just for that. All right, I'll talk to you later. Have a good weekend. Love you. Bye-bye. If I can stop it.